Hi folks, we've had the start of another doubleheader with F3 and F2 racing at Red Bull Ring in Austria. This is another track that the drivers are very familiar with across their feeder series careers. There are 3 DRS zones here and lots of passing opportunities, so be prepared for close qualifying times and bold passes. As usual, we'll start with F3. The F2 diehards among you should really stick around for the F3 segment for this video. The feature race in particular was an absolute corker. We have another seat change for the AIX number 26. This weekend, Salim Hana will be driving. The 16-year-old's in his first year of Formula Regional, having completed an FI Met earlier in the year, and is halfway through the current season of Freck with Prema. He has 3 podiums to his name so far. The rest of the Freck season clashes completely with F3, so unless he's ready to give up on Freck, we might only see him for the one race. As F3 had their in-season test here a little over a month ago, much as with Barcelona, this is a track they're all very familiar with, even in these cars. As such, not as much practice running is done in an effort to save their tyres for the competitive sessions. With the temperatures they were dealing with in Austria for this weekend, any tyre sets saved are a bonus to fight any potential degradation issues. Freddie Slater slightly gets in the way of teammate Noah Stromstead on a push lap, some foreshadowing for how the two of them would continue the weekend. Salim Hana goes wide into turn 3, James Wharton has a slide across turn 6, and Teofil Niall has a lock-up and goes wide into turn 3. We get a lot of drivers testing out the gravel trap, so we'll have a quick-fire gravel rundown. Noah Stromstead, Gerard G, Jose Garfias, Brando Badaware, Hiyu Yamakoshi, Freddie Slater, Yevan David, Fian McLaughlin, Tuka Tapanen, and Nicola Lacorte. Badaware and Tapanen get in another to close off the practice session. Moving on to quali, Teofil Niall loses both his first and second push laps, his second lap going well off the track through turns 9 and 10. Salim Hana also gets into the turn 9 gravel. Mattia Kolnagi brushes the turn 10 gravel trap, and Freddie Slater takes out the turn 10 inside bollard. Van Amersfoort send all their cars out into clear air while everyone else is in the pits. As Enzo Delaney winds up for a push lap, he slides into turn 10. Hiyu Yamakoshi sets an excellent time, giving the rest of the field a high benchmark to aim for as they pour out of the pits with 7 minutes to go. They roll slowly uphill to turn 3 in a cluster, no one wanting to take off and give everyone else a tow. Pedro Claro dips a wheel into the grass between turn 3 and 4 in an attempt to get a better track position. Continuing the trend of the weekend, Slater and Noah Stromstead jostle with each other for position. When we finally get up to pace, Taito Kato bounces over the turn 1 curb in clear air and then continues the subpar lap with a big spin in the turn 10 approach. Niall loses his chokehold on pole position for the season and is well down the order in 24th, having only got 1 time on the board for the session. Brando Badaware also struggles to string together a lap of the kinds he's managed so far this season. No one manages to knock Yamakoshi off the top of the board, Ugo Ugochukwu getting another second place locked in, and Noah Stromstead gets a best start so far of 3rd. Giusti impeded Christian Ho through turn 3 and gets handed a 3-place grid penalty in the sprint and feature race for the weekend. Alright, sprint race time. We get a few false starts as the lights go out. Salim Hana, Michael Shin and Fian McLaughlin all catch 5-second penalties. Nandavid Biramhakti also gets a 5-second penalty for being out of position, and Taito Kato is slow off the line. At turn 1, the tridents of Noah Stromstead and Freddie Slater clash, with Slater's right rear punched up into an unhelpful angle as he comes to a stop. Stromstead makes it away otherwise unscathed, and there are no penalties called for the racing incident. Pedro Claro goes wide in turn 3, and Ernesto Rivera takes the opportunity to reclaim the position he lost at the start. A safety car is called to retrieve Slater's car, and Salim Hana takes a trip into the pits. Our biggest lap 1 moves made before the safety car came out are Teofil Niall and Hiyu Yamakoshi both up 5 places, and Enzo Delaney down 6. We're green again on lap 4, and Christian Ho makes a pass on Gerard G down the main straight, but falls back and gets passed by Mattia Kolnagi. The next time around, Kato gets past Hiyu Yamakoshi at turn 4, followed shortly by Alessandro Giusti. Ho continues to drop down the order as the laps go by, and Stromstead also nabs a spot ahead of Yamakoshi. Gerard G and Mattia Kolnagi get ahead of Nicola Lacorte around turn 3 the following straight. A VSC is called to retrieve McLaughlin's front wing following him getting up close and personal with the back of Delaney at turn 1. The Red Bull Junior pulls into the pits for a fresh front wing, and we quickly get back to race pace. On lap 8, Louis Sharp and Niall make a pass on Lacorte through turns 6 through 9, and a few laps later Rivera starts to close the distance to James Wharton in the front. The next time around, Rivera taps the rear of Wharton as he crests the turn 3 hill. He makes another attempt to pass on turn 4, but Wharton continues to defend. The fighting between the pair has brought Jin Nakamura and the rest of the front runners back within DRS range. On lap 12, Claro attacks Nakamura through turns 4 to 6, but doesn't make the move. The next lap, Rivera tries to get past Wharton at turn 4, but again Wharton holds. One more lap and one more try, and Rivera finally closes the deal at turn 4. Further back, Lacorte manages to repass Niall, Sharp, and Kolnagi within a few laps. Claro gets fighty with Nakamura through turns 4 through 6 again for several laps, but Nakamura continues to hold position. Biramakti gets a 10-second penalty for weaving on the turn 3 and 4 straight. He made 6 changes of direction while defending from Jevan David behind. At this point, Ho has dropped almost back to the rear of the field. On the penultimate lap, Claro tries yet again on the tail of Nakamura through turns 4 through 6. At turn 6, Wharton dips a wheel into the gravel and Nakamura and Claro close the distance to him. On our final lap, along the straight between turns 3 and 4, Claro locks in and does a double pass on both Nakamura and Wharton. Nakamura follows him around turn 4 and also gets ahead of Wharton. We cross the line with Ernesto Rivera in first, and Pedro Claro with a hard-won second place, and Jin Nakamura with a nicely controlled third. I was honestly so happy with this podium. Rivera was a bit of an enigma heading into the season, and I wasn't sure how he would shape up against his Campos teammates. Consider me shown. I definitely expected Claro to sign with a higher finishing team in F3, but I'm glad to see him show off his great racecraft. That last lap double pass was beautifully done. As for Jin Nakamura, I really felt for the guy during the CT Frot series earlier in the year, and I really hope to see him back on the podium, so I'm stoked to see it happen here at Red Bull Ring. I'd love to see him dicing at the front of the pack some more as the season goes on. Kanato Lee finished in 18th, but was disqualified due to being 3 kilograms underweight. ART tried to argue the case that the car's water pressure dropped off after getting hit by some gravel thrown up by a driver ahead, but as they weren't able to provide evidence of the fluid weight in the car from before the race, the penalty stuck. Okay, feature time! This was such a good race, and further cemented Red Bull Ring as my favourite track for the season. Firstly, we have some penalties issued on race start. Alessandro Giusti gets a 10-second penalty for not undertaking the proper start setup procedure prior to the formation lap, and Nandavid Biramakti gets a 5-second penalty for a false start. We get some turn 1 chaos with Ernesto Rivera spinning out. It's hard to tell if there was any contact, but there were no penalties dished out as a result. Malche Guadish has some contact with Biramakti and ends up running full tilt towards the barrier. In an awful twist of fate, Jevan David was taking the escape road to avoid another incident and gets utterly collected by the out-of-control ART barreling towards him. Fionn McLaughlin is given a 5-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage ahead of Biramakti. Further up the field, Ugo Ugochukwu and Hiyu Yamakoshi go wheel-to-wheel up to turn 2, with Ugochukwu claiming the lead at turn 3. At this point, the safety car was called to retrieve the stranded cars. When we're green on turn 4, Trident teammates and temporary enemies for the weekend of Freddie Slater and Noah Stromstead go wheel-to-wheel through turns 2 and 3, with Slater claiming the place, following it up with a decisive pass on Yamakoshi at turn 4. Behind them, Fernando Barrichello and Michael Shin collide at turn 4, both taking each other out of the race. Before a VSC is called to collect the parked cars, Christian Ho goes wide into the gravel at turn 10, and McLaughlin makes the most of the chance to pass him. Mattia Kolnagi gets a 5-second penalty for being below the minimum delta time during the VSC. We get back to race pace on lap 7. Jared G drops several places and Alessandro Giusti gets past Jin Nakamura at turn 4. Next lap, Stromstead gets past Tuukka Tappinen down the inside of turn 3 with Giusti close behind. At this point, the broadcast dies and I was frantically scrambling to try and refresh the F1 TV stream on multiple devices while also watching the live timing site. When I tuned back in at lap 10, Slater had got past Ugochukwu for the lead. 1 lap later, Yamakoshi goes up to the inside of turn 3, claiming a place as Ugochukwu goes wide. Matteo De Palo gets aggressive and pushes Bruno Del Pino wide at turn 3, opening up a spot for Teofil Nile to capitalise on the failed move. Nile also gets past Del Pino, struggling to get back up to pace on his dirty tyres from the track runoff. De Palo continues his aggressive streak, pushing Fionn McLaughlin wide into the gravel at turn 4. On lap 15, Ugochukwu attempts but fails a pass on Yamakoshi around the outside of turn 4. At turn 9, Giusti goes wide into the gravel as Kato gets past. 4 laps later, Ugochukwu finally completes a turn 4 pass on Yamakoshi. The next time around, Slater dips into the gravel, Ugochukwu closing the distance behind and trying a turn 3 pass a lap later. We get 2 pairs going wheel to wheel, one after the other down the turn 3 and 4 straight. Slater and Ugochukwu, and Yamakoshi and Stromstead. This continues through turns 4 and 6. By lap 22, Ugochukwu gets past Slater on the turns 3 and 4 straight, confirming the pass by turn 4. Slater replicates the move a lap later, slicing off one of Ugochukwu's front wing end plates on his way by. Stromstead follows his teammate and gets past Ugochukwu at turn 6. The next lap, Stromstead makes the move against Slater and claims the lead as they approach turn 4. On lap 25, Kato gets past Yamakoshi at turn 1, gets repassed at turn 2, but makes the move again at turn 3. The fighting brings Tappinen, Nakamura and Claro up to them in a tight cluster. All three of them claim a pass on Yamakoshi down the straight. By turn 4, Kato is wide into the gravel, and Nakamura gets a pass on him too. Just in case that wasn't enough action, as they round the next few bends, Clara gets another beautiful double pass for the weekend on both Kato and Nakamura at turn 6. Out on the final lap, Ugochukwu gets pushed wide onto the grass on the turn 3 and 4 straight by Slater, but still manages to get the move done with a turn 4 pass. We take the flag with Noah Stromstead in first, Ugochukwu in second, and Freddie Slater in third. It would be nice to say that Trident have finally found their form this season, but DePaulo is still struggling to show any real pace. I can 100% totally and wholeheartedly recommend that you watch this race in full. This was the most fun I've had watching any race in any series so far this year. I was screeching like a pterodactyl at my TV a lot. Onto our F3 passes for the weekend. Teofil Nal was putting in work in both races to try and make up for his bad qualifying run, moving up 9 spots in both races. Our other out-of-place qualifier of Brando Butterware had similar runs from the back row, moving up 8 places in each race. The best result from our passes was Nicola Lacorte, who managed to get into the points during his 8th-place charge in the feature race. Louis Sharp and Matteo DePaulo also managed to climb into the mid-pack from places further back in the field. For our championship standings, Bruno Delpino drops down to 4th with only a small point gain for the weekend. Freddie Slater hopped into 2nd place with his 3rd-place finish, and Stromstead skyrocketed from 15th to 6th. Concerningly, Matteo DePaulo is still one of our drivers with 0 points on the board, far from anyone's expectations following his 2nd-place finish in Freca last year. It seems he's not very comfortable in the setups provided by Trident. That's it for F3 this week. Let's get into F2. No new F2 updates to bring you up to speed on. Our tyre allocation for the weekend are the softs and the super softs. All business as usual for the first part of practice. A little later on, Noah Leon has a snap at turn 1, followed by Kian Shields taking to the turn 6 gravel and spinning into turn 7. Marty Boyer takes out the bollard on the inside of turn 10, and Leon has another go pushing the limits at turn 1 and finds his way into the runoff. We get some gravel runners one after the other. Miney dips a wheel into turn 9, Alex Dunn into turn 6, Van Hoopen into turn 10, and Gabriele Mini has both a gravel jaunt and a curb hop in turns 7 through 8. Roman Belinsky goes into the turn 1 runoff, and Boyer closes our session going wide into turn 10. Our only practice penalties are monetary fines, €1,100 for Kush Miney speeding in the pit lane, and €500 for a wrench left on Emerson Fittipaldi Jr.'s rear wing, which landed on the track as he left the pit lane. Next up is our first competitive session, qualifying. Rafa Kamara gets stuck behind Nico Varone and doesn't manage to get a great time for his first push. Alex Dunn locks up and goes wide into turn 1. Nicholas Olive has a slide on the exit of turn 7 and loses an otherwise good push lap. Martinius Stenchon bounces over the turn 3 curb. Dino Boganovic gets wide off the line ahead of Dunn at turn 7, and Colton Herter skids into the turn 9 gravel trap. Noel Leon takes the offset approach that worked so well in F3 and goes out in clear air, also setting a session-topping time. When everyone else gets back on track, Stenchon goes wide into turn 1, and Kian Shields and Joshua Dirksen both dip into the turn 9 gravel, laying some nice marbles out for Kamara to roll into and make a mess of the final sector in an otherwise good lap. It was so effective the first time that Shields replicates the gravel dip and lays out another set of marbles for Kamara behind on his next push. We get some replays of Nico Varone, Colton Herter, and Sebastian Montoya all going wide, losing lap times. When the timer ticks down to 0, Leon's mid-session clear air push lap still stands on the top, with Dunn taking 2nd and Solov 3rd. Stenchon and Van Hoopen have another weekend of sitting lower than anticipated, and Boganovic and the high-techs of Herter and Rotoma Miata continue their trend of not being able to put together a fast lap. We make it through an entire quali session with 0 penalties dished out. Okay, race time. Starting off with the sprint. On the front row, John Bennett gets a better start off the line than Sebastian Montoya. We get a small pile-up with some turn 3 madness as the pack all checks up, cresting the hill at the sharp turn. Rafa Kamara lightly taps the rear of Taz Intrapuvizak, and being sandwiched in the midst of a pack of cars, Intrapuvizak spins and collects Nikola Solov and resident bad luck magnet Ollie Goethe. Joshua Dirksen has nowhere to go being behind the mess on the inside line, and gets parked in by Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. behind. Dino Boganovic blasts his way through, scraping Intrapuvizak and damaging his own front wing. The very first note I have on the sprint before the lights went out is that I hoped Ollie Goethe and Rafa Villagomez were finally going to get some good points starting nicely in the second row. It's actually mad how unlucky Goethe has been all season. Kamara gets a 5-second penalty for causing the collision with Intrapuvizak. This was brought down from the usual 10 seconds due to the stewards being kind about difficulties avoiding collisions during lap 1 when all the cars are clustered together. A safety car is called to retrieve Intrapuvizak. Goethe rolls himself to a track exit, and Fittipaldi is parked trackside and ready to be rolled away. Boganovic pits for a new front wing, and Dirksen heads into the pits too. We're green again by lap 4, and Kamara makes a great pass on Gabriele Mini into turn 3, followed closely by Alex Dunn. Dunn stays on the tail of Kamara through turns 4 to 6, but Mini closes back up to them by turn 9. The next lap, Solov starts to make up the lost ground from the lap 1 spin and gets past Lawrence Van Hoopen on the approach to turn 1. By turn 3, Varone and Stenchon go wheel to wheel, but Stenchon claims the place on the straight. He pulls off another pass the next lap, chasing down Rotoma Miata from turn 3, but closing the deal on turn 4. On lap 7, Bennett is forced to defend against Montoya through turn 6. The next time around, Montoya tries and fails to get through turn 3, but takes the inside on turn 4 and sneaks through. The following lap, Belinsky gets by Lyon up the inside of turn 3. Lap 11, Solov gets past Colton Herter at turn 3, but Herter refuses and repasses Solov as they go wheel to wheel down the straight. Solov doesn't relent and gets through on turn 4. A few laps later, Dirksen is called into the pits to retire his car. By lap 13, Boganovic starts making moves and getting past the rear fielders as Kushmini gets past Lyon down the turn 3 to 4 straight. 4 laps later, Dunn chases Kamara down the same turns 3 and 4 straight and gets past on the inside of turn 4. On lap 19, Herter slows to a stop as he rounds turn 3, our first technical retirement of the weekend. Van Hoopen lightly taps Herter's rear as he takes avoiding action on the dying car. At turn 4, Varone is victim to a double pass from Van Hoopen and Stenchon before the VSC is called to retrieve Herter's car from where he managed to park near a track exit by turn 4. His teammate Miata gets a 5-second penalty for being over the minimum delta time during the VSC. We're back to race pace by lap 22, and Solov passes Boyer into turn 1. At turn 4, Mini makes a move on Kamara. He puts up a defense, but Mini closes the deal by turn 6. The next time around, Mini tries a turn 3 pass on Belinsky, but has to abort the move to avoid a collision. On lap 24, Stenchon and Boganovic both get past Van Hoopen as he goes wide. 2 laps later, Solov passes Lyon at turn 4, basically the best possible damage limitation he could expect following getting spun in lap 1. On lap 27, Bennett goes full Hail Mary and tries a turn 4 pass, but Montoya is ready for him and puts up a good defense. By the final lap, Montoya doesn't have a hope as Bennett goes wheel to wheel with him down the turns 3 and 4 straight, and finally makes it past between turns 5 and 6. Montoya has to immediately defend from Villagomez behind, who is ready to pick up the pieces from the fight for the lead. As they take the flag, it's John Bennett in first, Sebastian Montoya in second, and Rafa Villagomez in third. This was an interesting podium compared to pre-season expectations. Bennett likely wasn't on anyone's list as a race winner, but Trident really seems to have brought themselves out of the hole they were in last year, and have been getting some really great results with both drivers. Prema have lacked pace all season and have really lost their reputation in the higher level feeder series. Perhaps this result will give Montoya some more confidence as the season progresses. Villagomez is finally getting the points to reflect some of the pace he demonstrated towards the end of 2025. He's definitely due some more points finishes. Let's get into our feature race. Not that this was a bad race by any means, but I had a lot more fun watching F3, so those of you who skipped to the F2 section of the video, I promise you need to watch the F3 feature. It is so worth your time. Our drivers starting on the alt tyre strategy with the softs are Taz Intrapuvizak, Ollie Goethe, Marty Boyer, Lawrence Van Hoopen, Colton Herter, Nico Varone, Sebastian Montoya, and Martinius Stenchon. I'm not 100% sure about Rafa Villagomez, but I think he was on the super softs. It doesn't really matter, as we'll soon find out. On turn 2 of lap 1, Joshua Dirksen moves over, squeezing Sebastian Montoya into Rafa Villagomez. Montoya and Villagomez skate over the gravel and out of the race. Up at turn 3, Nicolas Solov gets past teammate Noel Leon, who then puts up a great defense against Gabriele Mini down the straight. A safety car is called to retrieve the 2 stricken cars. Emerson Fittipaldi Jr. comes into the pits to swap to the alt tyre strat. This is before it counts as a mandatory pit stop, but he has little to lose if AIX think the alt will be more beneficial for him. We're back to racing on lap 5. Dirksen attacks Intrapuvizak immediately on the main straight, but doesn't get past until turn 3. Roman Belinsky joined them on the run up to turn 3, getting past Intrapuvizak at turn 3 the next time around. Miney follows and gets past him at turn 4. On lap 7, we're in the minimum pit window, and Belinsky and Leon take the chance to swap their super softs for softs. The rest of the super soft runners aren't too far behind them. Next lap, Alex Dunn and Dino Boganovic come in, Dunn crucially getting track position ahead of Leon. Another lap around we get Solov, Dirksen and John Bennett through the pit lane. Solov keeps his lead, coming out ahead of Dunn. The last of our super soft runners are in on lap 10. Mini, Rafa Kamara, Kush Mini, Rotoma Miata and Kian Shields. Mini manages to leapfrog the front 3 and come out with the effective race lead. Unfortunately, as Mini comes out on cold tyres, he has a hard job ahead of him getting them up to the right operating temperature. Solov catches him and they go wheel to wheel down the turns 3 and 4 straight, with Solov outbraking Mini and passing as they approach turn 4. Close behind them, Dunn also sneaks past at turn 4. 2 laps later, Dunn and Solov dice through turn 4, but Solov holds position. This doesn't last long, as less than a lap later Dunn gets through at turn 3, shaving off one of Solov's front wing end plates. Mini has managed to keep pace with the pair and tries the same, but Solov closes the door on him. On lap 15, Kamara gets a turn 3 pass on Lyon, and Mini continues to worry at Solov through turn 4 to no avail. A lap later, Dirksen gets past Bennett at turn 1, only for the two of them to go wheel to wheel up to turn 3, but Bennett doesn't have the pace or track position to reclaim the spot. The next lap, Dirksen continues his charge and passes Lyon at turn 3, closing up to his Invicta teammate. Stenchon pushes his way past Varone up the inside of turn 3 and gets past Herta at turn 4 a lap later. By lap 22, Varone tries and fails a turn 3 pass on Herta, but chases him down and nabs the pass on the straight. 2 laps later, Dunn has a lock-up into turn 4, allowing Solov to get a nose in, but he doesn't allow him to make the pass. A further mistake comes on turn 10 with Dunn dipping a wheel into the gravel. Solov chases him up the main straight and squeezes past at turn 1. Further down the field, Fittipaldi comes in to shed his softs and claim a fresh set of super softs. Next lap, Boyer passes Herta at turn 3, but comes to a stop as huge bouts of flame shoot out from the rear of his car. Technical retirement number 2 for the weekend. We get a VSC to retrieve the dead car. Before it was called, Stenchon had been called into the pit lane for his super softs, but after the race it was determined that he had not yet made it to the pit entry road itself as the VSC was in effect. This means his stop does not count as mandatory, and he takes a stop-and-go penalty, which is converted to a post-race 30-second penalty. We're back to race pace 2 laps later. Leon immediately chases Dirksen to turn 3, but doesn't make it through and tries again at turn 5. Dirksen continues to thwart the attempt. Ahead of them, Mini makes it past Dunn around turn 6. Next lap, Van Hoopen pits for super softs, followed by Goethe and Herta the following lap, and our final pit is of Intrapuvizak and Varone on lap 31. On lap 32, Belinsky passes teammate Beganovic up the inside of turn 3, which was really the beginning of the end for Beganovic. Over the next few laps, he was passed by Intrapuvizak and Van Hoopen. On lap 33, Kamara tries to get past Dunn on the outside of turn 3, but is pushed wide onto the curb. Kamara tries again the following lap, but has to chase Dunn wheel to wheel down the turns 3 and 4 straight, closing at turn 4, but Dunn continues to defend. The fighting has brought Dirksen and Goethe close behind them, Dirksen within striking distance of Kamara at turn 3 the next time around. As the trio fights for the final podium place around turn 6, Kamara loses a front wing end plate as he taps Dunn into the gravel. A few corners later, Kamara finally snags the spot at turn 1, and Goethe passes Dirksen for 4th. Dunn reclaims his spot from Kamara at turn 3, but Goethe nabs them both with a brilliant double pass at turn 4. Kamara then gets past Dunn at turn 5 for some damage control, but teammate Dirksen has fallen back into the clutches of Leon and Intrapuvizak, who both get past him. On lap 37, Dunn loses another place to Intrapuvizak without much of a fight around turn 5. The next lap, Dunn gets all over the curb on turn 1 and gets passed by Roden teammate Stenchon, who is up 13 places on the alt strat. On the penultimate lap, Van Hoopen gets an easy pass on Dirksen, a sad outcome for the driver who was in the fight for a podium spot only 3 short laps ago. Lap 40, Intrapuvizak tries a turn 4 pass on Kamara, but Kamara puts up the best defence he can with 30-lap-old tyres. We cross the line with Nicola Sullivan first, Gabriele Mini in second, and Olli Goethe in third. Finally, some luck for the German, who's been on the receiving end of just about every problem you can have in F2. The highest of honourable mentions goes to Martinius Stenchon, who had a mammoth run from 21st to 6th over the line, but his 30-second penalty demolished the work he'd put in on the alt strat and dropped him all the way to the last of the race finishers. Onto our movers and breakers. I've used Martinius Stenchon's feature result as he crossed the line rather than his post-penalty result, because this segment is anything but official and entirely about celebrating otherwise unrecognised efforts. All of our alt-strat runners in the feature race managed a better finishing position, but none could come close to pulling off the mad charge that Stenchon managed, sneaking through the pack largely without being shown on the broadcast, so we couldn't even admire his work. Nico Varone was our only driver who hadn't raced at Red Bull Ring prior to the weekend, and had a great run from the very back of the field. To be transparent, he capitalised more effectively in the sprint from the 5 DNFs, but had a great run regardless. Taking this into account, he would have been tied in sprint passes with Roman Belinsky, who was having his best weekend so far in terms of pace. Lawrence Van Hoopen also qualified well below the expectations he's set so far this year, and gave himself the hard task of trying to move up from being buried further down in the field. He was another alt-strat runner who got a lot out of a late pit stop after a long stint on the softs. We had some new technical retirement victims for the season, both occurring at the same place on track. During the sprint, Colton Herta chugged to a stop after getting to the top of the turn 3 hill. Then, in the feature, Marty Boyer blasted out some impressive bouts of flame just as he made a pass out of turn 3. For the updated championship standings, Nicola Solov made a little dent in Gabriele Mini's lead. The other title hopefuls will either need to get a string of race wins or hope that Mini and Solov suffer some technical retirements so they can try and close the gap. With Rafa Villagomez on the sprint podium, we now have points on the board for all of our competitors. Well, that was all I have for you this week. Like I said last video, there is never a boring race at Red Bull Ring. We had so much action, and I'll for sure be coming back to watch that F3 feature for years to come. We're straight into the next race weekend at Silverstone, which I'm sure will provide us with even more fantastic entertainment to enjoy. Please subscribe, and I'll see you again soon for my next race weekend update.